Metallica might be the most successful and popular metal band in the world. Considering this, it might seem like a boring choice for one of my favorite bands, but the first 5 Metallica records are masterpieces. Starting with Kill 'Em All from 1983, it is easily my least favorite of these 5. Metallica didn't quite have their own sound yet at this time. They were heavily inspired by both Motorhead and Diamond Head, and it shows. They took the speed and rough vocals from Motorhead and basically everything else from Diamond Head. Kill 'Em All is considered to be the first thrash metal record, though I suppose that is debatable. It's not quite as extreme as Slayer or other thrash metal bands. Perhaps some consider Kill 'Em All to be some sort of proto-thrash. I don't know. But regardless, even though it doesn't fully feel like a proper Metallica record, it was still fairly groundbreaking for the time, even preceding Slayer by a few months. Kill 'Em All is a fun time. Having seen a Metallica cover band live, I can say that the tracks off of Kill 'Em All are some of the best to mosh and headbang to. It is full of fun tunes to party to. However, in regards to just throwing on a record to listen to, Kill 'Em All is a bit underwhelming compared to the following albums. A lot of the tracks blur together, and there's not a lot of variety to the sound. The lyrics are also not as interesting. As I said, this is party music, and it's mostly about rocking out. It is much akin to AC/DC in the lyrical department. They even reference their own band name, which is something that would be unthinkable on the following records. It's something that's a bit odd to see in metal at all, and seems more like something that a rapper would do. The highlights of Kill 'Em All are Whiplash, Seek and Destroy, and Jump in the Fire. Now Ride the Lightning is where Metallica truly developed their own signature sound, blending thrash metal and progressive metal. This progressive thrash style is something special. Ride the Lightning, being from 1984, is also a pretty early example of prog metal to begin with. I don't think that Metallica gets very much credit for their contribution to prog metal, as they tend to be thought of as just a thrash band, and while tracks like Fight Fire with Fire and Trapped Under Ice are pretty thrashy, there are also much slower tracks like For Whom the Bell Tolls and Escape that make it hard to argue that Metallica are pure thrash metal, and other thrash artists like Slayer or Creator don't have too many ballad tracks like Fade to Black. The lyrics are also more intellectual than Kill 'Em All, featuring lyrics about the Spanish Civil War, Bible stories, and the inner thoughts of someone sentenced to death in the electric chair, which is the title track and the cover art. Good variety on this. I believe in Blue Album Supremacy. Might just be my second favorite album by Metallica. Master of Puppets is even more of a prog record than Ride the Lightning was. Sure, Battery and Disposable Heroes are some thrashers, but listen to The Thing That Should Not Be and Sanitarium, and then tell me that they aren't prog at all. The title track exemplifies the best balance in their prog thrash sound. I think there are two reasons Metallica is not recognized as a prog band, even though they very much are. Number one, prog fans don't want to associate the most popular metal band with their favorite lesser-known bands. They feel that it undermines other prog metal bands if even Metallica is considered one. But I don't think this is the case at all. I don't think that labeling Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets as prog metal lessens the quality of the genre at all. It only adds a couple great famous records to the prog metal library. Number two, on the other side of the coin, many metalheads have this anti-intellectual bent to them and view prog music as pretentious. But many of these same metalheads love early Metallica. So it makes sense that they would attempt to distance Metallica and themselves from this label. Sure, Metallica might not be quite as nerdy as something like Dream Theater, but they are just as close in sound to Dream Theater as they are to Slayer. And I think that is pretty evident. Then there's And Justice for All, which is a bit more unconventional, with its controversial, lacking bass, long track lengths, and having a proto-groove metal sound at times. While overall still being a prog thrash record, besides the ending of one, and the track Dyer's Eve, there isn't much actual thrash on this record. It's a pretty diluted element of their sound at this point. Despite this, And Justice for All is easily my favorite Metallica record. Even if that's somewhat controversial, I still very much love the Cliff Burton era, and I would say that Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets are easily my second and third favorite. But And Justice for All just has this energy to it, where every single note makes you want to smash something. You can do it your own way, if it's done is how I say. It has a very percussive sound. Not just the drums, but also the guitar and vocals. Every instrument, minus maybe the bass, just pierces sharply. The attitude in the lyrics hit hard, too. Such as Eye of the Beholder, which criticizes how freedom is valued in name only, but not in practice. And there are other jabs at injustice and corruption on tracks like The Shortest Straw and the title track. And there are also less political and more personal tracks about addiction, losing one's sanity, and feeling cheated out of independence. And Justice for All is truly a work of art, and I love it. The following record, typically called the Black Album or Metallica's self-titled, is often thought of as Metallica's sellout album, and that is kind of true, but I still love it. The Black Album is where they incorporated hard rock into their style. Metallica's self-titled is basically the template of what I like to call metal and roll, which is a hybrid of metal and hard rock. Sure, the whole new wave of British heavy metal era already incorporated hard rock into its sound, but it never sat right with me that the Black Album is simply called heavy metal and put alongside the likes of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. They are very different sounds. Metallica's sound here is quite a bit different than the classic metal sound. 80s metal, by contrast, had a lot more punk rock influence in its sound. I will concede that songs like Balls to the Wall by Accept or Metal on Metal by Anvil have a sort of proto metal and roll style. And there's also what is known as sleaze rock, which is basically glam metal and roll, adding a hard rock flair to a hair metal sound. Guns N' Roses and Alice in Chains are quite possibly the best known of this sleaze style. But Metallica really started something altogether new with their 1991 release. Something that I would say started a rift not only in the Metallica fanbase, but in metal as a whole. The Black Album is the dividing line between quote-unquote old metal and quote-unquote newer metal. This metal and roll sound would later go on to heavily inspire bands like Avenged Sevenfold, Disturbed, and Godsmack. And while all these bands tend to get wrongly labeled nu metal, they are much closer to that Black Album sound than something like Korn. Who do you think you are? What do you want from me? Honestly, I think that nu metal is an overused term, and I think that to many old school metalheads, the term nu metal essentially means any metal record after the Black Album. I think that this metal and hard rock fusion divided the metal fan base well before nu metal took off. Even their thrash metal contemporaries, Megadeth and Testament, adopted this metallic hard rock sound on their 1992 releases. Watch him become a god. As I wonder. Metal shifted away both from the slow sound of 70s metal and the fast pace of 80s metal, settling somewhere in the middle with that groovy sound that 90s metal is known for. The Black Album really was indicative of what was to come, which is why it was such a polarizing release. It is simultaneously one of the most popular metal albums of all time, but also immensely hated by many metalheads. Personally, I have a mostly positive opinion of the record, even though some tracks, like Enter Sandman and Nothing Else Matters, are extremely overplayed. The Black Album does still contain some of Metallica's best tracks, such as Sad But True, hey, hey, I'm your life. I'm the one who takes you there, and Wherever I May Roam. And there's also some deep cuts like Holier Than Thou, which are also pretty good too. It's a very different metal style than Metallica's 80s material, but I nevertheless think they nailed it on this record, and it has stood the test of time just as well as something like Ride the Lightning. Sure, it's not as heavy, but Metallica has always had softer songs anyway. This is just them exploring that in a greater capacity. I suppose that if you just want to stay in the 80s forever, then I can see why one would hate the Black Album. but it is, without a doubt, one of the most influential records of all time and a masterpiece in its own right. It's not really thrash metal at all, but it's still damn good music. Now, among Metallica fans, there seems to be three prevailing theories of when they started to suck. The first is And Justice for All. Some believe that the Cliff Burton era is the only real Metallica, and that everything after is trash. The second is the Black Album, that this is when Metallica sold out and became bad. The third is Load and Reload. I am in this third camp. The first 5 records are fantastic, and then, in the mid-90s, they became mid-Metallica. Load and Reload are very hit and miss song-wise, and even the good songs would have likely been deep cuts or bonus tracks on something like the Black Album. It says a lot that Fuel is likely the best track off of these records.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Ooh.
They diluted their metal and hard rock sound even further on Load and Reload by incorporating a more southern sound into the mix. It really feels like they are trying to sound like Corrosion of Conformity and not quite getting there. I recommend them or the band Down if you would like some quality southern metal. Load and Reload are not the best examples of the style. This is also where the lyrical content seems to take a bit of a dip in quality as well. This isn't to say that the lyrics are all terrible, but they aren't quite as inspired or thought-provoking as they had been previously. James's voice also sounds worse here too. I do believe due to a vocal cord injury he endured sometime after the Black Album. There is a noticeable distinction between the sharp striking vocals on Justice or the Black Album and the flat and sometimes even goofy delivery present on everything after. He has never been quite the same since. All of this makes this era of Metallica pretty forgettable, with the exception of The Unforgiven 2, which is a classic. Saint Anger is perhaps the most hated Metallica album. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I'm not a fan either. I will admit, I do like the song Frantic.
Determines my death style.
But every other track is a miss for me. It's like an attempt at a Godsmack album, just with worse production. This is funny, as I previously mentioned Godsmack being influenced by Metallica, and now the roles seem to have reversed. How the turntables. Death Magnetic is okay. This is alleged to be a return to their thrash metal roots, but that is only half true. Death Magnetic is more like a hybrid of Master of Puppets and Load and Reload, so it's got thrash metal elements. But to say it's a return to their original sound is a bit disingenuous. This is also the sound Metallica seems to have stuck with ever since, a combination of their 80s and 90s material. Most of Death Magnetic is forgettable, and I can't stand the track where James sings, "What don't kill ya, make ya more strong." But if I had to pick 3 good tunes off of this record, I'd recommend The End of the Line.
The slave becomes the master.
All Nightmare Long, and The Unforgiven 3.
How can I be lost if I've got nowhere to go?
Hardwired to Self-Destruct is up next. It has the same general sound as Death Magnetic, but overall more refined and polished. I like Hardwired much better. I might even say that it's the best Metallica album since the Black Album. I really like A Moth into the Flame and Dreaming No More. It does still have filler tracks, and it's not amazing, but if I had to choose a Metallica record to listen to in its entirety, besides the first 5 classics, I would definitely choose Hardwired. Finally, 72 Seasons is peak Metallica. This might just be the most forgettable record they have ever released. Definitely a step down from Hardwired. They've had a good run. I know I've been harsh on everything Load and Onward, but that's only because those first 5 records are so perfect. Kill 'Em All was instrumental in spawning thrash metal as we know it. Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Injustice for All showcase the heights that metal can reach, and how musically complex, beautifully contrasting, and lyrically deep the genre can be. And finally, the Black Album invented an entire new era of metal and hard rock that dominated the airwaves in the 90s and early 2000s. Metallica's influence cannot be overstated, even if the latter half of their discography leaves a lot to be desired. But besides their cool sound, what is it that makes Metallica so special? What does Metallica mean thematically, symbolically, and culturally? With an overly simplistic assessment, we could say it's the libertarian embodiment of the age, rebelling against authority, venting against tyranny, and longing for freedom. There certainly is an anti-government theme in many Metallica tunes, from anti-war songs like Disposable Heroes and One, to the fear present in Ride the Lightning, and most overtly in the track Don't Tread on Me. It doesn't get much more on the nose than that. However, I think we can view Metallica more broadly than the limited scope of the political ambitions of disenfranchised American Gen X youth. I think that Metallica also embodies the Faustian spirit more broadly. The yearning to control one's destiny is present in many tracks, feeling trapped in the boundaries and longing to transcend them, an urge to conquer time and space. Wherever I may roam best encapsulates this desire and way of being. This theme is present in almost all of Metallica's music, even in tracks you wouldn't think fit this theme, such as their tracks about Lovecraftian horrors, but even those reveal that fascination and curiosity about the unknown. Even in their instrumentals, where there are no lyrics, this theme is still present. And what is their most famous instrumental? Orion, named after the constellation in the stars. Metallica's music is the encapsulation of the desire for more, the craving for infinite space, the Faustian spirit. That is why I have always loved it, even though I did not always know the reason. Our acculturation continues as we explore my favorite bands.